This episode of After Dark is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to support the Boss Rush Network and our family of podcasts, head on over to our Patreon at patreon.com/BossRushNetwork. Thanks for your continued support.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to Boss Rush After Dark, the alternative topical podcast show for adults here on the Boss Rush Network. It's your boy, LeRon, back in the house tonight, and we've got some faces for us tonight. Not the usual faces, but we got faces all the same, and we love them all at once. So, first of all, let's go ahead and welcome back special guest chair, Mr. Matthew Kiel. What's up, dude?
You've subbed out one white dude in a backwards hat for another. I'm mad.
As we should. As we should. Like, the more things change, the more they stay the same. How's it going, man?
I'm doing all right.
That's good.
It's been so the past couple weeks you guys have, or at least Corey had tapped me for coming on. I'm like, I can't, and work was just so horrendous.
Yeah.
But I'm beyond that for a little bit now, so.
That's good. So,
yeah.
But I mean, you're doing things like a question. Because you work in the medical field, the hospital that you're assigned to,
yes.
Do they still have the heroes work here, like those banners and stuff?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, they do.
I guess this is never going away, huh? Like COVID brought that in, and that it's here to stay, huh?
It's real weird. Like my old hospital that I worked at, they had a walk bridge, like a skywalk, I guess you'd call it, from the parking garage to the main building. Mm-hmm. And on the windows you saw all of these, like, we definitely got a local elementary school to make a whole bunch of posters about heroes and whatnot, and about working here. And you just felt bad because, like, this is not that any of us that work in healthcare don't want to help people, because that's predominantly why we do it. But when the job that the place that I worked at, the things that happened during the pandemic to my coworkers, me, EVS, the people that aren't doctors and nurses, like, because the doctors and nurses are the only ones that seem to get any respect. The rest of us are basically, we don't count. That's how we feel. Yeah. And seeing a lot of that, like, you know what? Fuck it. I don't work there anymore. So mid-pandemic, so pandemic hit real hard in March. By June, we had received an email saying that funds were short, and our company, and this is definitely a first world problem, but they weren't going to contribute to our, like, 401k. So they weren't going to do any matching or anything like that. And any ancillary benefits that they would contribute to, they weren't doing, because they didn't have the money. Now, the inside baseball for this is they had bought 2 healthcare systems prior to doing this, and they were building a fucking skyscraper across the street. So you're sitting there like, that's still happening. Like, you're watching this, you're like, I'm walking from the train station to where I work, and I'm walking by a construction site that is building a skyscraper with my hospital's logo on, and they're still working in the pandemic.
Wow.
Meanwhile, like, my partner and I were trying to, like, adopt, and we weren't getting any help at that point. It was just a lot. It was just a lot. So you kind of thought, like, don't feel like a hero. And then, you know, I could go for a while. I'm going to stop myself.
Actually, you know what? Let's take a pin in that for a second, because let me go ahead and introduce our other special guest, back all the way from outer space. It's the one, it's the only, the beautiful Nellie, back. It's been quite a few episodes of After Dark.
Yes.
And it's been many episodes of not the Boss Rush podcast, the Crossroads podcast.
Yes, I'm back. Well, not officially, but
not back.
You know,
you gonna be back.
I am gonna be back. I'm excited. So yeah, it's
So,
me,
so what's
Mario.
up? How's it going?
Yes. Been drinking my water. Been staying busy, trying to stay out
Nice.
of trouble.
Staying hydrated and moisturized, right?
Yes. And like they say, my back getting smaller.
So for the listeners out there that may not know you or may not remember you, just real quickly, like tell us about yourself real fast.
Let's see. Well, you want the good stuff or the bad stuff?
Whatever you want to give us.
All right. So I can't remember when we started Crossroads, but I was on there since episode 1, and then I took a hiatus because life started lifing, and of course life is still lifing, but you just got to get back into it. You just got to grab it by the cojones and just keep going.
Yep. Well, I'm glad you're here tonight. Thank you for wanting to come on and then fill the guest chair for us tonight.
Yes.
Stephanie and Patrick will be back soon. They've got things going on. Life gets in the way, so but the show has to go on. So here we are. All right, so real fast, let me just go ahead and get this out of the way. If you want to support the Boss Rush podcast and the Boss Rush Network, you can join our Patreon over at patreon.com/Boss Rush Network at the tier that's right for you. Earning you such perks such as early ad-free access to this and other podcasts, exclusive access to the Spotlight interview access threads, voting rights on Video Game Book Club, and more. Remember, that's patreon.com/Boss Rush Network. But as always, your listenership and your viewership is always enough for us. If you're watching the video on YouTube, hit that subscribe button and leave us a thumbs up and or a comment. We'd like them both. If you're listening on podcast services like Apple Podcasts or Spotify, consider leaving us a 5-star rating and a review. You can also check out our merch over at TeePublic with over 50 designs to rep your favorite shows and more. And as always, you can always check out all of our content, reviews, articles, and more on bossrush.net. All right. Now then, you open a can of worms here, Matt. So I want to keep digging.
Okay.
All right. So I don't know. We're not out of the pandemic, but what was it like, in the early phases of the pandemic, working in the medical field?
In the early phase, well, it's kind of looped back around to this because there are still people that think it's not actually real in the healthcare ranks. They're like, but really, how bad is it? Now, granted, the people that I've interacted with that actually say things like that are in their 20s, relatively healthy, no real family history apart from like maybe nicotine and a lot of red meat. Like no real long-term chronic stuff that they've had experience with. Meanwhile, like I have family members who have autoimmune issues. So, and then like when I started my new job last year, a couple of them actually got COVID. And when they got back, I'm like, oh, it isn't real. None of them know this. My father died partly of COVID-19. So when they're saying that shit, I'm like, so where's my dad then? But it's weird. At the beginning, there was a lot of fear, mainly because we didn't know what it was. We didn't know when, like, everyone thinks that anytime we get like when I used to work in just diagnostic X-ray, you'd get the conspiracy theorists in the ER like, oh, X-rays aren't real, you can't see anything. How do I know that's my chest? I'm like, because you were standing right there when I did it. That's how we know. You get all sorts of interactions, and then there are also people who don't realize that X-ray goes through clothes. So like when I was in school, some of my favorite stories were the people who come in for a chest X-ray and you're like, okay, you just stand right by that board. You turn around to go pull them up on the computer and get everything ready. You turn around and all their clothes are off. And I'm like, you can put your clothes back on. They're like, what? I got to take the X-ray. I'm like, yeah, the radiation goes through that. No, please, this is not that kind of party. Put your clothes back on. And
hey, that's some of the most action they probably had since the pandemic started.
I highly doubt that. But you know, when you work in X-ray, that is a thing. But at the beginning, I worked third shift at a trauma center in Philly, and so predominantly on that shift, I was in the ER, and supply chain issues became a problem almost immediately because every department started hoarding their stuff. Yeah. So like, even though I was predominantly working in the ER, I was still under the umbrella of radiology. So like, if I wanted to get an N95, I couldn't just go grab out of the ER supply because they would be like, no, you can't have this. You don't work in the ER. I'm like, actually, I work right over there, but you're radiology. But I'm right over there and I'm in the ER. Like, you could see my office. You could see where I do my x-rays. But you're radiology. Like, that's how, like, it is literally like touching a desk and going base. Like, it's literally that. And then when things started to get worse, and before, just leading up to lockdown, there was actually a pretty decent amount of talks of like what kind of necessary precautions we would need to take. And just prior to lockdown, we started getting like PAPRs issued to everybody. And the PAPRs are like, if you remember, the closest thing I can think of is like E.T. when all of the government agents storm the house in those suits.
Yeah,
that's kind of like what it is, except it's just a hood and an air tube going to an air unit behind you.
Oh, okay, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
That's like it's PAPR. PAPR is an abbreviation for something. I don't know what it is off the top of my head because it's been 3 years and I haven't had to wear one since, because I got vaccinated and whatnot. But now it almost seems like it's a minor inconvenience a lot of the time. At least that tends to be the reaction to, like, oh great, COVID, now we have to do extra cleaning. It's like, come on, man, this person's sick, give him some grace. Jesus Christ. Like, what the hell? And it's almost like when, like, I work predominantly in the OR now, and I do I basically, I'm standing next to surgeons while they do brain surgery.
Ooh.
Whoa.
So wait, you're back to being a nurse, or
no, I'm still an X-ray tech.
Okay.
I'm still an X-ray tech, but I do a lot of endovascular brain surgery, essentially.
Okay. Damn, that's gotta be cool.
It's pretty sick, if I'm being honest. But
because I mean, I love watching medical shows and stuff like that. Like I was stuck on the Resident when that was on. As a matter of fact, I discovered that show and Transplant during COVID. The Resident basically follows the chief resident, of a hospital and stuff like that, as he's training like new residencies and stuff like, and things of that nature. And like, eventually, like, even though the show starts off, following chief resident, like, eventually it becomes all about the ensemble crew of like the hospital and stuff like that. So everybody from the nurses, the specialists, the nurses, the specialists, the physician's assistants, the department heads, all that stuff. It honestly it's like a very high paced like version of that show ER. And then I was watching, and then I also discovered Transplant. And the reason why I discovered Transplant is because I do like like those procedural dramas that deal with like medical or first responders and stuff like that. But Transplant had a very good premise, because it talked about this doctor who basically was an immigrant from Syria, and he lands in Canada, and he's trying to get back into the medical field, but of course, like like his transcripts and stuff never made properly from Syria, so like there's no he is a doctor, but there was no real way to say that he was a doctor, stuff like that,
Yeah.
and so it's intriguing, and so like when I'm watching these shows and stuff, like they actually show their Hollywood way of showing like these surgeries and stuff like that. So like it's like, are you actually there when they like cut the section of the skull open to actually get to the brain?
So I have been. That's not generally what I do. I'm endovascular, so I'm more worried about arteries and veins.
Oh, you're okay. Okay.
Okay.
But we do have there have been I work with neurosurgeons and one neuroradiologist, and they do the four neurosurgeons do open cases like that, and we'll have to go in and perform angiography in the middle of the case. So what they'll usually do is they'll clip an aneurysm, repair a dural AV fistula, things like that, and they'll perform an angiogram in the middle, and that's where I come in, because generally for the open cases, since the brain is all soft tissue, like X-ray is not necessarily needed. We use it in conjunction with a lot of contrast media for the endovascular stuff, because it's just vessels.
Okay.
But yes, I have seen a head drilled into. I have seen a brain cut open. I have seen all that, and it's somehow way cooler and way cleaner than any of those shows make it out to be.
I believe it. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure. Yeah. It's fascinating. Like, it's funny because like I do not like gore, but I'm like, I don't like Hollywood like horror movie gore and stuff like that. But medical procedures, I can watch that shit all day long. Watch it all day long. So yeah, we definitely appreciate you for your service that you do. You're not a member of the United States Armed Forces, but this shit you have to deal with, you might as well be.
Yes.
It's fine. It's one of those. Well, so it's one of those things. Like, I graduated X-ray school in 2013, and it was one of those things. Like, they touched on pandemics and mass emergency situations like that, and it's weird how much of that applied, because I thought, when you're learning about it in school, you're like, is this shit really gonna happen? Like, am I gonna ever have to worry about this sort of thing? And then late 2019, early 2020, it's also like, oh crap, this can happen. And then it did, and you realize, oh, they did train us for this. So it was interesting that, and especially when the COVID pandemic was about to happen, you start learning about the Spanish flu from 100 years ago, and you start applying everything from that to this. Even though it's not necessarily like a one-to-one. It's not, and it's also not fully square peg and round hole situation either. Like, a lot of it translated really well in terms of like a training standpoint for healthcare providers and workers. But the amount of resistance you get to talking about that, especially in early 2020 and even into 2022 and 2023, like, you're like, but it's over. We have vaccinations. I'm like, but people are still getting it, so it's not over.
Yep.
And it's wild. It's wild to think, because like anyone that took like eighth grade biology, or just like regular science, and we got to the point about like viruses and communicable diseases and stuff. If anyone had those courses, which like I'm pretty sure they used to be required courses. I'm not sure what they are now, because I am 30 plus years removed from middle school and high school at this point in my life. But the amount of like wild nonsense I hear from people, they're trying to justify why they can't be just 5% safer, when dealing with what we dealt with in the pandemic and stuff like that,
Yeah.
it's like it's like it's like you will act like someone has the black lung plague, like if they sneeze from a common cold, but
Mhm.
but if you don't see someone actually bedridden, with COVID, you don't think they can pass the disease. Like what's wrong with you? Like because like there's such thing as being a carrier without having any symptoms. I thought
Yep.
I was asymptomatic for years because like it took me over 2 years before I came out with COVID for
Well,
the
I mean,
first time.
it also it doesn't even have to get to like junior high and high school biology. Like where I grew up in sixth grade, we started learning about sexual education in health
Hmm.
class,
Yeah.
Hmm.
and we learned about a pretty famous disease known as syphilis that doesn't present
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And like it is exactly kind of what COVID-19 could present as too.
Hmm. Yeah.
Where you don't have symptoms, but you could still have the disease, and people are like, that doesn't make any sense. I'm like, but it does. You just didn't pay attention.
And then the
Granted,
craziness. And then the
granted,
craziness.
there's a
Go
reason
ahead.
I went back to school at 30 because I didn't pay attention in the rest of school, or I didn't decide to figure out what I wanted to do till way too late.
Yeah.
But you know, when I was in a healthcare or an allied health sciences program and learning about that, I did start to recall, oh yeah, I did learn that.
Hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But
It's
what I will say, the one thing, you know what I hated most, and I'm not targeting anybody on this call. Anybody that had the gall to talk to me about how boring it was working from home.
I will never see. I will
Anybody who
never.
said that to me, I literally wanted to just excise them from the world.
Given that you were literally
There-
walking into a
I
battle
was
zone
I
every
was
day.
literally I had to fit because I don't have a car that I can use all the time. I had to like for
Well,
like I
sometimes you
think
were on public transportation if you
yeah
weren't walking.
and public transportation was shut down for a month here, so I was like ride sharing and
I
I
don't
was
think public
paying.
transportation shut down where I was at. Did it shut down for you, Nellie? Like you're in the Orlando area, right?
Yeah, I'm in Orlando. I stayed in
Yeah.
house, so I don't even know.
Right.
I know whenever I went out. I know whenever I went out because like I still would because of my line of work. I do have to like go to offices and stuff and
Mhm.
things like that
Mm.
from time to time. Even though I work from home,
Right.
like my job setup has been like work from home for years. Like we
Yeah.
technically have an office, but I don't have to go there if I don't need to. Stuff like that. But if I have to like deal with clients and stuff like that, I usually have to go to where they are. So it's either at their office or at their homes, stuff like that. And I know for sure, like I don't think I ever saw a point when the buses were down here.
Yeah, like well, and like and I might be exaggerating. They might never have gone fully down, but it was down to a point where it was I was either going to be hours late to work or I
Mhm.
was going to get there hours before I had to be there. So it was like I was really sort of caught in a corner. Like it wasn't, and I know that ultimately it sounds like I'm just complaining about an inconvenience, but when you don't have the transportation yourself, you start to
Yeah.
realize that you have to and there were plenty that were like, man, I'm just sick of being at home. I'd give anything to go to the office. Like, come on in. They're like, oh no, I don't want to do that.
Yo, I was living my best life. I was living my best life. I was like,
Yeah.
look.
See, and Nellie, I will say, the individuals who enjoyed it, I'm so happy for y'all. I'm so
Mhm.
glad that happened. I'm so glad you were able to figure out a way to live well and be safe. But
Mhm.
the people who are like, I'm so sick of being at home with my kids,
Okay,
fuck
okay.
them.
You know what? Though? Okay, come on. You just opened a whole different like door right there.
No,
It's like
I didn't. No, I didn't, because they were complaining about being able to be home with their family. You want to know how often I see my son before he's asleep, LeRon? On
tell
my
me.
days off. That's the only day I can.
Wow.
because I get home after he's gone to bed. I barely
Yeah.
see him in the morning. Like So
what's the typical shift for you? Is it 10, 12 hours? What's your typical shift?
I work 4 10s, so
4 10? Okay.
I have to be there at 8:30. I'm done at 7. If I'm on
Okay.
call, I usually have to stay late, or
Mhm.
I come home and I just basically sleep down here because I have to keep everything super loud. So if I do get called while I'm asleep, I wake up.
Oh,
Now
okay.
you're not a doctor though, so
No,
why do you have to be on call as a radiological technician? Wait,
it's
maybe prepare.
technologist.
So which means you have special like training
Honestly,
in
honestly, I every time someone asks me the difference between a technician and a technologist, I have to Google it because I had to know what the difference was for my boards, and I forgot it immediately
mm,
after.
Mm.
But so the
you've got certifications that
so
kind of
this the X-ray
requires you to be there.
certification, yeah, the X-ray certification. Someone with certification has to be present during all procedures. That is mandated by the American Society of Radiologic Technologists, the American Registry of Radiologic Technologists, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and I think the Federal Department of Health.
Mm.
So I'm there because the government says I have to be.
Government.
Shout out to Damon Wayans. But yeah, so I'm there because I legitimately have to be.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Okay. That makes sense. Like I figured it had to be like your qualifications or something.
Yeah.
Because
Mhm.
I'm like usually on call is like nurses, physicians assistants, and doctors.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, like I mean, if you're cutting people open, like yeah, I'm sure you're on call.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. All right. So yeah. So I would ask one more question, and then
Then we
we
can
move
lighten
on.
it up and talk about abortion. No, I'm kidding.
so so what's the craziest thing you dealt with during the pandemic?
Oh, during the pandemic?
It had to be some wild ass story.
So the pandemic stories aren't any. So I'll say this before I really get into this. I'm usually the way this question is asked is what's the grossest thing you've seen? And I
I don't
will
want
say
to know the grossest. I don't know the grossest
I know.
thing.
Hear me out.
I don't need to know. I don't need to
Every
know.
It is my belief that every healthcare worker has a canned answer for this. Not like It's not like they haven't seen some things, but I'll just say I've seen some things that if I were to like, I could talk to my wife about them because she's a psychotherapist and she's gone into people's houses, like she's done at home therapy
Mhm.
in horrendous situations. So she understands, and she grew up in medical, and she was when she was in undergrad, she was in medical as well. So I'm not afraid to like talk to her about the really horrendous things that I've seen.
Yeah.
Um, but I will say the general public, you are not ready. None of you are ready. But the grossest, the pandemic stories, I didn't. They were more problems with staff than patients. Like
Mm.
so working third shift, because I worked third shift till about mid 2020.
That's when all hell breaks loose.
No,
Yeah.
but the pandemic got real bad because everyone freaked out. Like you would in the intensive care units, they would basically use IV tubing extensions to take all of the IV stuff out of the room, but leave like the tubes to go in. But so they didn't have to like gown up every time they had to change a heparin bag or a fluid bag or a med bag, and that was cool. But the worst offenders put baby monitors in patient rooms. So so if a patient needed something, or if like an alarm went off that couldn't be placed outside, they would hear it. But if they heard an X-ray tech struggling, like trying to get an X-ray cassette under a bigger patient, they would sit out and laugh.
Mm.
They'd be like, "Ha ha, he's struggling. Ha ha." Look at him. He's trying so hard. And it got to a point where I'm like, I literally grabbed the monitor. I went to the patient's door and I looked at the desk while they were all just sort of looking towards the room. And I grabbed it. I go, I see y'all, right? Can someone gown up and please help me shoot this abdomen? That would be really lovely. And you know what 5 nurses did? They got up and walked 5 different directions. None of them came my way. And so I took everything off. I went out. I went to the chief attending on staff, and I got the nurse manager on the phone. And I looked at the attending. I'm like, I have the nurse manager on the phone. I'm using names in this, like, so they know who I'm talking about. And I said, who's in charge of such and such room? And the attending would say the nurse's name. I go, so that nurse and 4 other nurses on this particular floor, which, as we all know, is an intensive care unit, were laughing at me trying to get my x-ray detector under a patient. And when I asked for help, all of them went 5 different ways. None of them came to help me. So, attending, can you give me the names of the people that these could have been? And the attending said, okay, come with me. And I have the nurse manager on speakerphone, and he walks to the break room. Guess where everybody was? Break room. He's like, so who thought it was funny for the x-ray tech to just struggle? And when he asked for help, y'all went whatever way you wanted. They're like, oh, it wasn't us. And I'm like, yes, it was. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. And the nurse manager goes, she named everybody in the room before like the doctor could say anything. He's like, I have files on this computer for all of you right now. And all of you will be called into your respective chief's offices the next day. And this will be dealt with. Meanwhile, x-ray tech, what's your name? And I said, Matthew. He's like, I'm going to come up. I'm going to personally help you. And I hope the people in that room are watching so they can learn how it's done. So this never happens again.
Mm-hmm.
And the funny thing is, I was friends with one of the nurses on day shift, and he actually called me while I was sleeping. He's like, what did you do last night? I'm like, what do you mean? Are you talking about the 5 nurses that were acting ratchet and laughing at me because I couldn't get it under that particular patient that we all know was a problem? And he's like, yeah, because 5 people just put in their notice. And I'm like, what? Like, yeah, they'd rather quit than get disciplined or work. And
what?
Yeah, so that's the most fucked up one.
Beautiful.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
All right, Nellie, tell us a tale from the pandemic. I'm just messing with you.
I don't have any. I was doing a lot of gaming.
I was at home playing Animal Crossing like a normal person.
I was trying to play Cyberpunk.
Oh yeah, because then we talk about like it crashing and everything.
Yeah.
But you had a PC, so I mean.
Yeah, I had a PC. I had a PC at the time. I had a graphics card that was one generation behind, so like it was on the struggle bus, but I was able to do something.
Which I need to download it for my PS5 now. So.
Yeah, because it's fixed. It's fixed.
Oh, you mean it's officially released? No, I'm joking.
Not the PS5 version. Wait. No, there's a PS5 version now.
I don't know.
It is.
I don't pay attention to game news anymore.
It's been out for PS5.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I'm
still playing Monster Hunter, so.
Yeah, I'm playing Monster Hunter Stories right now. The second one. I beat the first one. I'm not really quite in a hurry to go back to it, even though I am going to play it. But yeah. All right, so we have a listener question, but the actual listener is here in the podcast with us tonight.
Yes.
So, Nellie, this is your question. I'm just going to go ahead and let you read it, ask it, present it, however you want to do it.
All right. So, My question is, how come in some sex scenes we see female anatomy and we don't ever see male anatomy? That's just me. And it came up because I was playing Red Dead Redemption. I love that game. I'm obsessed.
1 or 2?
2.
Okay.
Which brings me.
Who's naked?
It
So,
don't matter.
So, Arthur Morgan, you have to pretty much bathe him. Okay. So, in the game, we see him get out the tub. We see his back, and then we see, a leg coming over the tub. I've played a lot of Rockstar games. We know in GTA, we see female breasts.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, how come we can't really see what Arthur Morgan is working with? That's just me, and I'm not trying to sexualize the character.
I actually have
what is the dangly bits?
I actually have 2 serious answers.
Yes.
1, the penis is ugly. Because
Depends on who you ask. Depends on who you ask.
I mean, come on. Which gender of the 2 main ones? I'm going to say. I'm not trying to discount, but which
one's easier on the eyes?
Which anatomy doesn't look like a space alien? We want to see that one a lot.
Well,
I figured that.
I mean, when you look at from certain angles, it looks like a space alien for sure on a woman.
I mean, I'm not saying that it can't possibly look like something off of the island of Dr. Moreau, but largely, it's a beautiful piece of anatomy, and
I think so.
And largely,
are you sure? Because we have more statues of naked men from over the eons of human history. We have more of the male form and figure than we do of females, and I'm not saying that we don't. I'm not saying that we don't have artwork of women.
So that's. But I mean, you want to talk about that? That's ultimately sociological, right? Because the men are the athletes, the warriors, the hunter-gatherers, and they are the ones who conquer. We don't want. I mean, there's like a handful of great female warriors, and most of them were burned at the stake because they were deemed hysterical for being able to beat the shit out of dudes. Like, let's talk about, like, that's the conversation that needs to be had. Like, maybe we could just let women, coexist with us in whatever role, and maybe the whole patriarchal binary thing can go away and we can all just move forward as a society, because that's the one thing holding us back. Enough of that for now. But back to the penis. The penis is ugly, and also dudes with penises are very, 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 way too many varies insecure about it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they are blessed, if they are endowed, or if they need a microscope to find it. They do not think theirs is any good. Anybody that does is a very good liar.
Yeah, I was just curious because I was like, I don't know if it goes to target audience. It's like, female body, male target audience. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, and that definitely goes into it too. I'm not completely naive. That definitely goes. Into it too.
I think our society, and not just United States society, I think human society is just really weirded out about male anatomy. Everybody has all these body parts. You know what I mean? Men have these body parts, women have these body parts. We're not even going to talk about the transgender thing this time.
I've worked in healthcare for over 10 years. There's all these body parts. All of them are weird. All of them are gross.
Yeah. And before anybody comes into
it doesn't matter if they're beautiful, they're still weird and gross.
And before anybody comes to the comment section, because I said the transgender thing, I'm not trying to make it like a thing, quote unquote. What I'm saying is the transgender talk is for another episode of Crossroads, because we can talk. 100%. I'm not Crossroads. I'm sorry, After Dark, because we can talk about that.
Old habits, am I right?
Yeah, old habits. Old habits. Yep, for real. But yeah. In all honesty, like you draw a line, like one half of the human civilization is women, the other half is men. stuff like that. So there's enough of these body parts going around and stuff like that. But for some strange reason, like as a human, as civilization / culture, like we get upset about male anatomy. For some we get
Some
excited
odd reason.
about below the waist, above the quadricep, male anatomy.
Because it's weird. Because like I remember, like in a
We all fear dicks. Just say it, LeRon.
I remember it was one time like people thought naked men was fun, and I'm like, I think the male body's beautiful. I mean,
Sure. I'm not
I think
saying
so.
it can't
I
be.
think so,
I'm,
too.
I'm not here. I mean, sometimes I catch
really
myself in the
think
mirror and go,
human
you know
beings
what? I look all right today. But other times I'm like, geez, why did my wife marry me?
You had something she needed or she wanted.
You haven't met her. That woman doesn't need me.
Yeah, but this question does strike like a real, like it does bring up a lot of questions because like like in sex scenes, especially in like we know Hollywood has done full frontal, and they damn near done pornographic,
Sure.
stuff like that. So why is it that like it's almost flipped in some cases, right? Like we'll see sex scenes now, and like the woman still has a bra on or some type of top on and stuff like that. The man's almost, if not all the way naked. I mean, like shoot, like stuff like that. How did it flip? Because like it used to be that like we see women's anatomy all the time
yeah.
in movies and suggestive content and stuff like that. I remember when. See, I'm old enough to remember when like it was a shock that one time we saw like a man's ass on an episode of NYPD Blue.
Really?
Yeah. Like no, like I want to say like the scandal was called the ass heard around the world because that was on broadcast television.
The ass heard around the world doesn't sell that the way you want it to.
It doesn't, right? Yeah, but that's also when like like TV boundaries really started getting pushed though because like like content like that like those shows came on after 10 o'clock at night.
Which brings me to my next point. Like, if you watching like Zane's Chronicles, I guess I'm showing my age. I don't even know if they still show that on HBO.
I wouldn't know what that is.
Well, she's a writer. She writes a lot of sexual stories and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I kind of peeked at the show, but again, it's like you see the female body and you never see the male body. Like you say, it's just probably like an ass shot, but that's about it. And I'm like, I want to see, Welcome back.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to step away.
That's all right. It's all right. Yeah. Yeah, like I mean,
but it's like, is it such a taboo that women?
No, it's not. It's not that taboo. Actually, you know what? I feel like the conversation about women's anatomy turned around, as Game of Thrones is happening. Because I feel like Game of Thrones was like the first show that people got hypersensitive to like nudity and violence and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And let's be real for a second here. Like Game of Thrones did not have that much graphic like violence and nudity. Yeah, because I feel like for everything that was shocking on that people say is shocking on Game of Thrones, they never watched Spartacus Blood in the Sand.
Sure. Well, I mean, and I think Game of Thrones was sort of an apex of the discussion because I think it had started to change with shows like Oz or well, hear me out.
Oz had a lot of male nudity, and it also had a lot of male.
But you also had HBO doing like Nip Tuck, Queer as Folk, The L Word, things like that. I mean, forget Sex in the City because there was zero sex. None of that was any good. It wasn't. I'm sorry. I've watched 5 seasons since my son was born because that's all my wife can fall asleep to. None of those women. For talking about
they're not
sex
having good sex. I remember Sex and the City. They're not having good sex.
No, none of. I don't know if I could satisfy any of them, but they are not satisfied by anything that happens on that show. But So I think that Game of Thrones was an apex because of all of those things that had happened prior. Um, I just love that everyone was all hyped for the TNA and on Game of Thrones, but none of them wanted to talk about the incest. Jamie and Cersei, brother sister.
Yeah.
I mean, no one, everyone just blew by that. Like, oh, it's fine. There's boobs there, right? It's fine.
Mhm.
But I
think
don't.
I think the straw broke the camel's back was when Sansa got raped by Ramsay.
Yeah, 100%.
And the crazy part was you didn't even see that, but I remember in the first season for quite a few episodes, like Khal Drogo was dragging Daenerys through the desert, raping her all the time.
Mhm.
I remember that, but but they didn't. But they got wholly upset about Sansa, being defiled, and it wasn't even shown on and it wasn't even shown on screen. Like
No.
it was it was just implied,
Yep.
So I mean, like, it's funny. It's funny how we cherry pick. It's funny how we cherry pick what is extreme, because like going back to Spartacus blood and sand for a moment there, right? In the first season, they showed one of the I forget what they call them, the guys actually fight in the games, like they're not Spartans, because
The gladiators.
yeah, the gladiators. Thank you. They showed at one point, like he pissed off, like there's one gladiator pissed off like the owner's wife, and like she had his dick cut off, and it was shown on screen, like, and it's like y'all weren't in arms about that, like what,
I mean, the sex on TV talk almost becomes like a discussion about religion with people who use their religion as a political cudgel, because they want to pick the good parts. They want to pick the stuff that they agree with. They don't want to look at it as a whole.
Yeah.
Like the idea of the Bible going through multiple translations and possible mistranslations over the course of its existence. Nobody wants to, no one wants to engage with that, because then all of a sudden it might fuck with the worldview that they've held on to so tightly.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do agree with that.
And also, when you have that conversation with someone about the Bible, you find out how much they actually don't know. And the
That
hard,
is so true.
And the hard thing when you're in that situation is, if you are the person who's exposing the lack of knowledge, the person being exposed feels vulnerable, embarrassed, and attacked, whereas you're just trying to show them a different way. I mean, we all have that one. I'm assuming we all have that one relative that is like way too religious for their own good.
Oh yes.
But then all of the things that they like spout about the way society should be, and then you like say, have you read Leviticus? And they're like, yeah, I've read Leviticus. So what do you think about this part that is essentially absurdist comedy if you apply it to the modern day? They're like, well, that doesn't, no one cares about that. Like, actually, well, you do, apparently. You've been saying that this entire time.
Like, yeah, you're supposed to care about it.
And I'm like, and then you find out that if you really go through the books, you realize that they stopped reading midway through the New Testament, and they've only revisited like Proverbs and Psalms since.
Yeah.
So a whole lot of information in that book is just ignored.
Which, by the way, like, like anyone that's read like the Bible, especially the Old Testament, like from front to back and everything.
Fucked up shit there, man.
Exactly. I was about to say you like a different type of like gore porn. I'm just gonna say that right now, because I mean, like there is all sorts of stuff, and this is not me taking a dig at religion and stuff like that. I'm just talking about the stuff that's in it.
Yeah.
You know, we've got stuff from like horrible things happening to, you know, how like the Republicans are like, but the kids, this and is that horrible shit was happening to kids all the time in that book. Why haven't they learned from that? You know?
Because they only eat the cherries they pick.
Yep. Yep.
Wow. I'm just quiet.
Don't tell me we got too real.
Nellie's like, what did I walk into?
Right. I was like, whoa, this just got like deep.
I just wanted to ask a funny sex question. Where did this come from?
I was like,
this is
whoa.
this is the real world.
I mean,
like
yeah.
when things start getting real.
So,
and we have our lives taped. Oh wait, no, that's a different thing.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. Like, I do feel like independent films and independent TV shows, like they still kind of keep that level though. Like 9 times out of 10, you're gonna see nudity. Like, you know, you're gonna see what she's got going on. You're gonna see what he's got going on. You're gonna see it interacting, and then, you know, but yeah, like for the regular consumable stuff, basically the Hollywood stuff, like like they're way too uptight.
Share with the world. No, I'm just playing.
I can show you the world.
Oh, come on, Disney.
Someday I'll be part of your world.
Question is, are they showing you the full moon, or are they showing you the ray of hope?
Or does it mean no worries?
Hakuna Matata.
Someone said Hakuna Matata. They're having their adult fun time.
It means no worries.
We got any parting thoughts here?
You saying any important thoughts?
Any parting thoughts?
Oh, parting.
Parting thoughts on this subject.
I was like, I got important thoughts.
The 15-year-old in me wants to go these cheeks, but you know, I feel like that's the wrong thing to say.
No. I had to think for a minute.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
I have a dumb thing I want to do real quick.
Yeah, what's that?
I was way too slow to react when you were introducing Nellie, so I'm just gonna play this here.
Hey, that fits the topic for the night. So.
I love you guys. I love you guys. Nellie, I miss you, and Matt. Like you and I text now. Text more.
Yeah,
we text more of each other now.
Oh yeah. And you don't respond to a lot of mine.
Oh, it depends on the level of busy I am. I'll be honest with you.
That's fine.
Sometimes
I'm just kidding with you.
No. I mean, with my job, like in IT and stuff like that. Sometimes the phone gives me anxiety when it when it rings, or when I get a text message and stuff like that. Sometimes it's like, ooh, I'm like, what am I dealing with today? Like I was actually having a conversation with someone that works in the IT field. They work on the cybersecurity side, and we were basically trying to like one up each other about the craziness and the stupidity that we have to deal with in the IT field sometimes and stuff like that. So yeah. But dude, I do answer you though. Like I might not answer you immediately.
I'm just messing with you.
I was about to say, man, like, what are we, boyfriends now? Like, do I need to answer you as soon as I get the notification?
I think that would get us both in trouble, and I don't want that to happen. So
yeah, I think so too.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine? I'm sitting on the couch with my boyfriend, watching something, and Matt texts me. It's like, oh, I gotta answer this.
Like, ooh. They just look over like.
All right, well, this has been fun. I think we can go ahead and wrap this episode up now. So
pause.
So Nellie, Matt, just pause. I want to thank y'all for hanging out with me tonight. I appreciate it.
Happy to.
Anytime.
Yeah. You know what? We don't always do this, but really quick, let people know where they can find you at on the interwebs and whatnot. Nellie, you first.
Woo woo. Do I still use social media? I do. Okay. So you can find me.
That's how you ran me down about being on this episode tonight.
That is true. But it's like I don't even remember my little handle. Hold on. So I am
My.
because I rarely use X now.
Call it what it is. It's still Twitter.
It's still Twitter. All right.
Twitter.
It's still Twitter to me, damn it.
Right. It's still real to me, damn it.
If we're being real, like like after they conceded defeat about like trying to get porn off of Twitter, I was like, hey, at least it lives up to his name now.
Yes.
All right. So you can find me at Planet Nellie. Of course, it's Planet N number 3 and Nellie LLIE. And I don't have an OnlyFans, even though I've been talking about it, but it's okay.
I'm still talking about it. And Matt, if you want people to find you, where can they find you at?
So you can find me on Blue Sky. I'm no longer on Twitter.
That explains why I couldn't find you when I was trying to tag you in something.
My handle is still there. It's _rewind, and I'm pretty sure you can still tag me, but I don't look at it ever anymore. I deleted the app off my phone. I don't know if I had to. I don't think I could remember the password. But it's _rewind on Blue Sky. That's open to the public now, so you can find me there. You can also find me hosting a movie podcast with my buddy Jesse. It's called Freereeling It, and we just watch a movie, talk about it, and then we talk about what else we might be watching. We just did a triple Audrey Hepburn feature. That'll be our next episode released, but we like movies a whole bunch. We talk about them.
All right.
That's it for me.
All right. And just check the show notes for how to get in contact with the rest of us over here at Boss Rush Proper. That's me, that's Corey, that's Stephanie, and it's Pat. So beyond that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up tonight's show. I want to go ahead and once again thank you guys for joining me for the episode tonight. I appreciate it.
Yes.
And if you are watching or listening to the Boss Rush After Dark, the alternative topic podcast for adults on the network, please let us know if you've enjoyed the show by leaving us either a 5-star rating or a nice review on podcast services. Over on the YouTube side, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Go ahead and like the video as well. And, share this stuff where you can. Like, it helps with our discoverability and visibility. We love you guys. We still are in the pandemic, so still be safe out there. Do what you can. Also, take time to enjoy each other's anatomy.
I'm just watching Nellie.
Enjoy it with consent, though. You know what I mean?
Yes. Don't make anybody feel uncomfortable.
All right, well, we're out. We'll be back next week for another all-new episode of Boss Rush After Dark. So we want to say good night. Take care, everyone.
Adios.
If you want to see how you can become a Patreon producer, head on over to patreon.com/BossRushNetwork. The Patreon producers for this month are Adriel Munger, Austin Campbell, Celeste Roberts, Christian S., Sana Dierig, Francisco Santillan, Matthew Kiel, and Todd Oxtra. Thanks for your continued support of the Boss Rush Network.